because that was one of the reasons that I didn't want to get out of the Marine Corps. I said,
Right.
well, Ed, it's not about the money, because I've been conditioned to think
Right.
that it's not about the money. You're not in the military because of money. So that's why I got paid $2,800. And I remember Miles said, Charlier, you've said that all your life, which is the very reason you don't have any money. But all the things that you're stressed out about, like you wanted to retire your mom, because I've always had a work ethic.
Right.
And he said, money is not going to define you. It's not your character, but all the things that you want to achieve, why would you not put yourself in a position where you have earning power?
Well, welcome everybody to the Audacious Faith Podcast. And if you're not familiar with our podcast, this is for those who have the audacity to believe that God put them on this earth to do more than just exist, but to make a huge difference in the world. And today I have a very special guest. I've been looking forward to this for a while, actually. It's somebody that I met back in 2011. And he has totally changed my life in many ways and blessed my family's life also. He is a very well-known and successful entrepreneur. He's a business coach. He's a senior executive vice chairman in finance, a great family man, somebody who has done a lot of awesome things and continues to do so in the area of leadership and finance and many other areas of life. And I'm so looking forward to having him share his story with you today, because it's truly a story of taking bold steps of faith and going from one place in the journey to really getting to a place of great success. So, Dan Charlier, thank you so much for coming and allowing us to come into your home here in a nice backyard setting and kind of sharing with us today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. That was a great introduction. I gotta have you introduce me more often.
There we go. There we go. Well, I want people, a lot of people that are watching this will be familiar with you, but there's going to be a lot of people as well that don't know you. You have an amazing story. You know, you're very successful now, but in childhood, it probably wouldn't have looked, you know, in the circumstances like where you're at now is where you were destined for. But I think that God knew different. And so why don't you kind of fill us in a little bit from the beginning and share a little bit about that?
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about your podcast, and you guys are doing a great job. There's a great mission statement here, and I'm so happy that you're investing the time to empower people. I was born in Haiti. I'm Haitian. And actually, I just visited my mom. I grew up in New York. I just visited my mom, and she showed me my first passport. The first time I came to the United States, which was in 1972.
Okay.
I came to visit my mom. So I used to come visit my mom once a year once I turned 6. But my mom immigrated from Haiti in 1968. And she came here with the dream of the American dream.
Yeah.
So she started working in Manhattan for a very prominent family as a caretaker as she was going to school. And I would be in New York for like 2 weeks. That was the first time that I met my mom, because, you know, when she left, I was just about turning 2 when she left.
Okay.
And so at 10 years old, she asked me to stay in New York. And so I grew up in Brooklyn, New York with a single mom, went to school. And school was really, you know, I didn't speak English at the time. I spoke French and patois.
Okay.
And so that was a transition, coming from Haiti into Brooklyn, New York. That was a big transition.
Wow. Yeah.
And went to high school in Coney Island to William E. Grady. And woodworking kind of was my thing. And that was when I had my first mentor, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Quigley. And Mr. Quigley taught us so many different things in that woodworking class, and he taught us different things about life. And right before I graduated high school, Mr. Quigley told me, he said, because he saw that I had a talent and I had a love for woodworking. So he told me, he says, Danny, you want to be an architectural engineer. And he said, those are the guys that make the money. You want to be the person on the set with the pencil behind his head and then draft paperwork underneath his arms. And then, so I decided that I was going to go to college, and I went to State University of Farmingdale, Long Island.
Okay.
And when I was at when I was in at the university, I was having a great time. I was living on campus. My mother was working 2 jobs to pay for my school, and they had a program there. They had a program where the graduates from the year before came to speak to the freshmen. And so I was in an auditorium and I was listening to the graduates speak, and I just had an idea. I just had a thought. And I was watching the number 1 student that graduated the year before in my field. So I went up to him and I asked him a question. I said, hey, my name's Dan Charlier. I want to do exactly what you've done. And if you were me, knowing what you know now, what would you have done different and why? And he looked at me and he said, I would drop out and go get a job.
Oh, wow. Just blew your whole thing right out of the water, right?
And I thought to myself, I was like, what? You would do what? He said, yeah, I would drop out and go get a job. And so I asked him why. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I did everything they told me to do. Now I'm a couple of $100,000 in debt and I can't find a job because everyone's telling me that I don't have enough job experience. And how am I supposed to get job experience when no one's hiring?
Right.
And this was in 1987. And for some reason, it made sense to me. Mm-hmm. And so I decided, like, the next day I dropped out and I went back to Brooklyn. And I told my mom that school's not for me and that I dropped out. And my mom, I remember she said to me, she says, well, school's not for you. This house is not for you either. So you need to figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But you can't stay in here.
So she really kind of like shoved you out of the nest then.
Yeah, I think for her, she wanted me. I remember she said, you know, that she worked way too hard because at the time I started working at Harlem Hospital as an exterminator because one of the guys in my building, he started an exterminating company. His name is John. He started an exterminating company, and he got the contract for Harlem Hospital. So when he heard I dropped out of college, he came up to me and said, hey, why don't you become one of my exterminators? I'll pay you $200 a week, and then I'll teach you the job. So I started working at Harlem Hospital, and this was 86.
Okay.
So I started working at Harlem Hospital as an exterminator. And I remember one time I came home, and my mom said, you know, I immigrated from a third world country with $20 in my pocket to put you in a better position. And my vision and my dream for you is not for you to become an exterminator at Harlem Hospital.
Yeah.
You need to figure out what you're going to do with your life, but this is not it. So that was pretty disturbing for me. I think I might have been 19 years old at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing basically is I mean, you go from Haiti to Brooklyn, which is a crazy transition.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have certain people in your life that see something, including your first, instructor there who's telling you.
And the kids in Brooklyn are not really nice, because I didn't speak English. So bullying and being called French boy and all of that stuff growing up in the inner city there. So you toughen up really quick.
Real quick, right? So then your mom, who is working her tail off. Basically, she's got you here, and she's not going to be content to just let you do whatever, just to earn a living. So there's that push. So how much of that push do you think that without that, how would the course of your life be different?
Well, when my mom said to me that you need to figure out what you're going to do, but this is not it, and you can't live here, I actually believed her.
Okay.
Like my mom wasn't the type of person back then that when she said something, she doesn't really mean it.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I was on a time clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was probably the most loving thing she could do to you
Yeah.
at that particular point, even though it seemed probably harsh.
Yeah. I mean, I have kids now. I can't even imagine saying that to my kids.
Right. And it is definitely a different time. So, okay. So exterminator's not going to be it. So what ended up happening at that point?
So I was disturbed, and I didn't know what I was going to do, to be honest with you. I was just like, there was like a blank. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was on a train one day, and I was going to Manhattan. I was going to Harlem Hospital, and I just happened to see a Marine in a dress blue uniform. And I got this idea. I was like, oh man, that's a good looking uniform, right?
Okay.
And maybe I'll join the Marine Corps. But it was just an idea. So I got home that night, and I told my mom, I said, Mom, I was on the train. I saw this Marine in a dress blue uniform. I think I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And she looked at me. She says, the Marine Corps? She says, do you know how tough the Marine Corps is? I was like, yeah, I heard. She's like, the Marine Corps is really tough, right? What makes you think you can make it in the Marine Corps? I said, well, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. And so the next day, this was on a Friday. The next day was a Saturday. And I remember being in my room and her calling me, right? And she says, Danny, come here. I have someone on the phone that needs to talk to you. I said, okay. So I picked up the phone, and I never forget, it was a sergeant. It was a recruiter. It was a Marine Corps recruiter. Mm-hmm. And he says to me, we hear you want to join the Marine Corps. I was like, we who? He's like, well, your mom called us and told us that you want to join the Marine Corps. And I was like, well, I was just thinking about it. And, the Marine Corps recruiter is a recruiter. So he's like, well, let's think about it together. Come down to my office. And next thing you know, I had a hand in the air, and I was going to Paris Island. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
So you were kind of like, you thought about it, and then you were pretty much almost thrown into the.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gotcha. So how did the Marines then, because obviously that was going to instill a total work ethic, a type of commitment, a dedication that maybe you previously hadn't experienced?
Yeah, that was, right before I left to go to Marine Corps, my mom sat down with me. Mm-hmm. And she basically told me, she says, I don't think you're going to make it. And I was like, really? And she said, but I want to remind you of something. If you don't make it, the opportunity of coming back to Brooklyn doesn't exist. So you need to figure out what you're going to do.
Wow.
So when I went in the Marine Corps, I don't know that I knew what I was getting into. Mm-hmm. 'Cause I remember it's pretty intense environment going to boot camp. That whole experience of going to boot camp and getting there and being on the famous yellow footprints and drill instructors yelling and screaming at you and all of that stuff. I remember the first day that I woke up in the barracks, I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, what did I get myself into?
Right.
Right. And just being so scared. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I don't have any other options. I got to figure out a way to make it. Right. And there was probably two specific times in boot camp for me personally where I had the thought, okay, this is where I tap out. There's no way I'm going to make it. There's no way I'm going to be able to graduate.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the bridge was kind of burned behind you.
Yeah.
So how important do you think that is? Because a lot of people, they'll go into something, but they have the plan B, they have the exit plan, and so they take it. How important do you think it is sometimes to have the bridge burned behind you, where you can't, the fear of failing overtakes you because it's like, wait a minute, I have nothing, so I have to push through.
Yeah, at different stages of my life, I probably would have answered that question differently. Mm-hmm. But what I've learned being in leadership for the past probably 40 years, everyone's wired different. Yeah. Some people can operate with their back against the wall and the best version of themselves come back.
Okay.
And some people, it can totally destroy them. destroy it in the sense that they don't have the confidence, or they're just wired different.
Okay.
So I see some leaders, they'll have their business leaders get themselves in financial debt, and they believe if they get them in financial debt, then they have a reason to go work.
Right.
And then some people that works for. Some people, it's the opposite. They want to have a lot of savings, and they have a lot of savings, and they could still have a desire and work and pursue. So it depends on the individual.
Okay.
You know, the other thing too, I became a Marine Corps drill instructor, so I got a chance to train hundreds of privates.
Yeah.
And you know, there's different personalities. It's not. I don't think it's. I don't think it's a clear cut that this is the way that it can be done. I've seen it done so many different ways.
Yeah, so it kind of depended, but you rose to the occasion, obviously.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you were backed against the
I
wall.
think for me, the conditions were different.
Uh-huh.
You know, growing up in the '80s, single mom. You know, it's the conditions are different. Like the conditions that my kids are growing in now is very different
Sure.
than, you know, those days.
Right. So you mentioned, so you end up in the Marines. Not only do you push through,
Hmm.
but you get to a level where you're literally instructing others.
Yeah,
Okay. And then you rose up even to a very good level in the Marine Corps. I mean, you were on a great path
right.
on the Marine Corps. Were there certain people along the way, certain mentors in the Marine Corps that were key for you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've always, you know, in time of reflection, I go back. You know, Steve Jobs has a quote where he talks about dots can only be connected backwards.
Right.
So, like when I was in high school, I think Mr. Quigley was that person for me.
Okay.
Obviously, my mom was that person for me. When I went in the military, when I went to boot camp, obviously my drill instructors, they believed in me more than I believed in myself.
Okay.
They pushed me through all the areas in boot camp that I was just like, you know, I remember the first time I did swim qual, I was like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to be able to qualify. And then my drill instructors, they pushed me, they made it happen. And I remember when I went to the rappelling tower, I was like, oh my God, there's no way I can do this. And then my
Sounds
drill
scary.
instructor,
Yeah.
my drill instructors pushed me, and I
Uh-huh.
got it done.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the rifle range where you have to qualify with the M16A2, 200-yard line, 400-yard line, 600-yard line, 800-yard lines, which is technically 8 football fields.
Yeah. Right.
And I was like, I've never touched a rifle before.
Uh-huh.
And then I qualified, right? And I remember graduating boot camp. So those instructors, those drill instructors, they played a pivotal part in my training. And when I graduated boot camp, I remember the first idea that I got in my mind was like, I want to come back. I want to come back and become a Marine Corps drill instructor. And then 4 years later, you know, I picked up every rank meritoriously, and I went back to Parris Island. I went to DI school, which is super intense, and I became a Marine Corps drill instructor.
Awesome. So I think the point we're bringing out, that you're bringing out so well, is that there's got to be something inside a person which drives them forward. But at the same time, I think that in life, people come into our life that are key. The smart person is going to be the one that takes that mentorship.
Right.
And you're already identifying various people, starting with Mr. Quigley and all the way through that. I mean, it's just like, what, you didn't even do woodworking, but still he saw something in there. And then along you go. So you get all the way to the point where you're a drill instructor. You're carrying colors for the president, right?
Yeah, that was a different. So when I became a drill instructor, I was on my 4th platoon that I was training.
Okay.
And one of my mentors at 3rd Battalion Kilo Company was my first sergeant. So my first sergeant took a liking to me because he saw my work ethic, and my platoons always performed. So the first sergeant called me in the office one day, and he says, Charlier, I want you to go up to Marine Barracks 8th and I and compete to become the 23rd Color Sergeant Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is looking for a new Color Sergeant. So the Marine Corps has 3 titles that end with of the Marine Corps. You have the Commandant of the Marine Corps, which reports directly to the President. That's a 4-star general.
Okay.
You have the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, which is in charge of all the enlisted and reports directly to the Commandant and the President.
Right.
And you have the Color Sergeant of the Marine Corps, which is entrusted in carrying the colors at the White House, the national colors at the White House.
Okay.
And all through the military district of Washington, representing Marine Corps. So it's a super, super, super prestigious position.
Yeah.
You've got to have a White House clearance. So what the Marine Corps does is they take all their top sergeants on the East Coast, and it has to fit a certain criteria. You have to be between 6'3" to 6'6", impeccable career. You've got to be able to get a White House clearance, which is super intense.
Sure.
So they take all their Marines from the East Coast, their top Marines from the East Coast, their top Marines from the West Coast, and they compete, and they go to this board at Marine Barracks 8th and I to compete. So at the time, I had no idea what the Color Sergeant Marine Corps was. And I remember telling the first sergeant, I said, First Sergeant, I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to be, I love being a drill instructor.
Right.
I don't want to go to Marine Barracks to compete. And I remember the first sergeant says to me, he says, well, Charlier, I wasn't asking you. You're going whether you want to or not.
There you go.
So that's how I ended up going to Marine Barracks 8th and I to compete for the Color Sergeant Marine Corps.
So here again, this is what I'm hearing. All right. So you had got to a point where you had done well. You had achieved. You were doing what you like to do. You were comfortable in that position.
Yeah.
And it seems that in people's lives, especially when they end up doing some really big things, that there are those moments which you're just identifying right here, again, where they get yanked out of their comfort zone by someone, either by themselves or someone throws them out of it. In this case, you were given really no choice. Otherwise, you probably would have stayed exactly where you were.
Right.
Right. And so you get propelled out of the comfort zone, and now you get into a position which here you're starting off in Haiti. Totally unlikely. Could you have possibly seen yourself in that position in a president's color guard when you're in Haiti?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, probably no way.
Yeah, no way.
Right? And so it's already totally improbable. And here you are now in this position. This is a position that is very difficult to get. You have to even fit. You even set a certain height criteria. I mean, everything. So it just narrows the field completely down. So now you're in a position which earns you a lot of respect, I would imagine. Yeah. Right? Very respectful. I'm sure you have pictures which we'll put up.
Yeah.
And all of this. But that's not where you stay.
Yeah. I once the color sergeant at the time was a guy by the name of Sergeant Keck.
Okay.
He was impeccable Marine. Mm-hmm. And he was in charge of selecting the new color sergeant. So there's 30 of us at the barracks. All of us have impeccable careers, and we're competing for this one position.
Right.
So the first day that we get there, Sergeant Keck, he's a big physical fitness guy, and he says, hey, we're all going to go for a run. So I need everybody to put on their shorts and T-shirts and running shoes and meet in front of the barracks. We're going for a 3-mile run. So we all go down, and all of us are in really good shape. I'm a drill instructor. I'm running 3 miles in probably like 17:10, which is flying.
Right.
And so Sergeant Keck says, everybody pair off in twos, and we're running from Marine Barracks 8th and I to the FBI building, and then we're coming back. Right. So everybody's stretching, everybody's paired off in twos. And I noticed Sergeant Keck was, he was stretching by himself. So I said, Keck, who's running with you? And he's like, no, I'm going to run by myself. I'm super fast, so I'm going to run by myself. And I was like, well, I'm super fast too. Let's run together. right? And he's like, no, you don't understand it, Charlier. I'm like really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I'm really fast too, right? So let's run together. And he was like, okay. So everybody takes off, right?
Right.
So Keck and I start running. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm looking at his feet and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way this guy can keep this pace. So instead of running my own pace, I start running his pace.
Okay.
So by the time we get to the 1.5 mile mark, I could hardly breathe. And I remember he looked back at me. He says, are you okay? And I was like, yes. And I literally started walking and I was watching him go up Capitol Hill. And he just went into another gear. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's a machine, right? So I get back to the barracks. I was the second fastest guy, but I came in last. And everybody's laughing. They were like, Charlier, like Keck runs 3 miles in like 15:10. And I was like, what? Right? But what I learned from that is that, you run your own pace.
Okay.
Right? You compete, but you don't compare, right? So if I would have ran my own race, I would have been the second person, but because I was trying to keep up with him,
Yeah.
I came in last. So that was a pretty distinction moment in the competition. The other distinction moment was they were doing a full honors funeral in Arlington National Cemetery. So Sergeant Keck says to everybody, look, I'm going to have a bus there for you guys, take you guys to Arlington National Cemetery. I want you guys to stay on the bus, and I want you guys to see what it looks like when we do a full honors funeral. Okay. So we're on the bus. We all have dress blues. It's freezing outside, snowing. The full honors funeral is absolutely beautiful ceremony. You've got the Marine Corps Silent Drill Team, you have the Marine Corps Color Guard, you have the Drum and Bugle Corps, you have the Body Bears, everyone's in their dress blues, and it looks beautiful. So I'm sitting on the bus and I'm looking outside and I'm looking at the color sergeant. And when he's breathing, I noticed like smoke's coming out when he's breathing. I was like, man, it looks freaking cold out there, right?
Uh-huh.
But it looks beautiful. And so I went to the bus driver. I said, hey, open the door for me. I want to go outside. He said, well, Sergeant Keck wants everybody to stay on the bus. I said, well, I don't work for Sergeant Keck. Open the door. So he opens the door. I go outside and I do the stand. Because the big thing about being color sergeant, you got to be able to stand for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, all different types of weather, whether it's hot, whether it's cold. So I do the stand.
Uh-huh.
So I'm standing there. And like 20 minutes goes by, 30 minutes goes by, and all these thoughts are going through my mind. Oh my God, when are they gonna bring the body out? Like, it's so cold out here. Don't they know that we're out here standing? And all of this stuff's going through my mind, right?
Yeah.
And you also got to pay attention, because if you lock your knees, you can pass out and not even know.
Sure.
So I do the stand, they bring the body out, we do the march, and I get back on the bus. After everything's done, we're going back to the barracks. And I'm just shivering. We get back to the barracks. I'm in my room, and the sergeant of the guard comes in, knocks on my door, says, Charlier, Sergeant Keck would like to speak to you. And I said, okay. So I go to Keck's office, which uses a 22nd color sergeant, and he says, I have a question for you. He said, I gave specific instructions for everyone to stay on the bus. Why did you get off the bus? Mm-hmm. I said, well, one, I don't work for you. We're both sergeants. I was a drill instructor, so I was pretty intense, right?
Right.
So I was like, one, I don't work for you. Two, sitting on the bus, everything looked great, but I wanted to know what it actually felt like to actually stand out there.
Uh-huh.
And then he looks at me, he goes, and what was your take from standing out there? I said, it's an extremely prestigious position, but it's a very tough position to be in, right? Yeah. And he looks at me, he pauses, and he goes, you're my replacement. And that's how I became the 23rd Color Sergeant of the Marine Corps.
So you were willing to step out of the bus while everybody else was going to sit there?
Yeah,
Based,
it was my, I just had an intuition. I just had an instinct. I was curious
right.
because I didn't really know whether I wanted the position because I was doing what I love. I want to be a Marine Corps drill instructor. So
Uh,
I was assessing, is this something I wanted to do? It wasn't like I was competing. Oh my God, I got to be the color sergeant. I didn't really care, to be honest with you.
mhm.
You know, so it was very authentic and organic. I don't know that I could explain it back then. I've always had a gut instinct, and
Right.
I've always followed my gut instinct.
So do you find that with people, because you've worked with a lot of people leaders, you've already said that, everybody's a little bit different, but is that a common separator right there, with some people, that instead of everyone else just followed the orders? Okay. And I'm not necessarily saying that you
Mhm.
shouldn't, but there are times when somebody will not just play it safe like everyone else.
Mhm.
They have that instinct, they have that gut feeling, whether it comes from God or wherever it is,
Mhm.
where they say, I don't even know why I'm doing this,
Mhm.
but I just know I need to do it.
Mhm.
I mean, once you were out there, you were kind of realizing what you got yourself into, because it was very cold.
Yeah.
But how much do you see that common, where there seems to be that separator type of um, personality or that experience, where it's the person that steps out and takes that bold move?
I think, I think for me, I've been a meditator for probably over 15 years.
Mhm.
And I think for me, like when I think back in all these defining moments,
Yeah.
um, and whenever I've had a gut instinct and I learned to trust myself, like you've ever done something and you go, man, knew I shouldn't have done that. Right?
Right.
I've done that millions of times.
Right.
But I think for me is that as I started to learn how to trust myself and remove doubt,
Yeah.
like the lower vibrational doubt, fear, worry, frustration, anxiety, depression, all those lower vibrations, as I started, seeking personal improvement, started reading books,
Yeah.
and I started to understand, I was like, oh, that's how you do. That's how you do that. That's how you do. So for me, I think a lot of people, they get that idea, but then doubt comes in.
Right.
Or they start to talk to other people that goes, well, someone like you can't do this. What makes you think you could do something like this? Or their parents, their friends, and things of that
Yeah.
nature. And they allow the wrong people to influence them.
So people who you listen to are
Oh, yeah,
definitely definitely huge.
that's really, really a big part of it.
Right. So you go from there, you end up in this position. So you're set. I mean, you're in a good spot, a prestigious spot, a respected spot. And then you end up in a journey that you totally shift gears, end up out of the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I mean there was a part leading to that because I was the most prestigious position at the barracks is the color sergeant of the Marine Corps.
Right.
And at the time, my mentor, I have two mentors. One is a gentleman by the name of Colonel Salas, who's the colonel of the barracks. And the other is my first sergeant, which is First Sergeant White.
Okay.
So I do my 2 years successfully. I get my orders to go to California. And the colonel of the barracks, Colonel Salas, calls me in his office. And he says, Color Sergeant, I need you to stay back another year.
Yeah.
I said, stay back another year? Stay back another year and do what? I mean, the most prestigious position is color sergeant. With all due respect, sir, what would I do? The only thing I can possibly think is becoming the platoon sergeant for the Marine Corps Silent Drill Team, which is #1 drill team in the world.
Okay.
And he said, but I said, I can't do that because I'm a sergeant. That's a staff and CO billet. And then he says, color sergeant, you're thinking too much. What I want to know is, do you want to be the platoon sergeant of the Marine Corps Silent Drill Team? I said, sir, that's a huge honor. But I have a question for you. Why you offer me this position? Because everybody else at the barracks wants this position.
Yeah.
He said, well, that's interesting. That's an interesting question. He says, well, there's two parts. One, I've interviewed the senior leaders on the Marine Corps Silent Drill Team and gave them 3 names. They all said you. He said, that's the first. He says, second, I'm up for a star, and I can not have any issues with the Silent Drill Team this year, and I know you're the guy that can get that done. So I became the platoon sergeant of the Marine Corps Silent Drill Team in 1995. That's where you'll see all the pictures with me and the Silent Drill Team, and at Notre Dame doing the halftime show, all of that stuff. So that was an incredible experience.
So even a higher position
Yeah.
at that particular point, which makes your exit even more unlikely.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So you were on your way. Let's say you stayed in the Marines.
Yeah.
What were you on your way to?
I was when I got out the Marine Corps, I was a gunnery sergeant. So my goal was I wanted to become a sergeant major and potentially become the sergeant major of the Marine Corps. That was my ultimate goal. And then once I got out the military after 30 years, my MOS was aircraft rescue. So I was either going to be a firefighter or I was going to become an instructor, either police department, special services, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So basically it was set. It was mapped out. It was there. I mean, nothing was really going to get in the way. Mm-hmm. Most people would have been completely satisfied with that. Mm-hmm. That would have been just fantastic. A very successful life. And yet it changed.
Yeah.
So, and for the better.
Yeah.
But so what are some events that led to a dramatic change?
Well, in 1995, after my year with the Marine Corps Silent Drill Team, the Marine Corps basically said, because I had 5 years, because those are called special billets, special duty, between the drill instructor, color sergeant Marine Corps, and the drill team, that was 5 years of special duty. So the Marine Corps said, you can go anywhere you want to go, but you have to go back to your MOS, which is aircraft rescue. Okay. And then so we used to do shows in California, right? So I remember the first time I went to California, I was like, oh my God, I love California. Yeah. So I told the Marine Corps I want to go to California. So I got stationed at El Toro in Santa Ana, California, back to my original MOS, which is aircraft rescue. And it was like one of these jobs as aircraft rescue. I mean, I liked my job, but it wasn't something that I loved because obviously, you know, when you have to do your job, something's falling out of the sky. Sure. And in 1989, I went to my first crash. And when I was stationed in Quantico, Virginia, it was a Cessna that was flying over the Potomac, crashed 100 feet away from the church. Everybody died on impact. And I remember thinking to myself, if I never experience this again, I'll be fine. Sure. So in 96, I'm back at aircraft rescue. I'm working 24 on, 24 off, 48 on, 48 off. And I'm also working part-time. I'm doing construction, moving company, working at Sam's Club. And in 1990, but I was disturbed. I've always been a dreamer. Yeah. I've always looked at beautiful homes and beautiful cars. I'm like, man, I wonder what. So I've always had this thing that I was always a dreamer. Okay. Right. And in 1998, I got a phone call from a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet, and he called me. And I'll never forget it. It was a Sunday night while I was in Crash Fire Rescue, and he said, "Hey, my name is Ed Milet. We have a mutual friend. I want to introduce our opportunity to you." And I remember telling him on the phone, "I'm not interested in opportunities." Mm-hmm. And he said to me, "Well, how could you not be interested in something you know nothing about? I heard a lot of great things about you. I'm coming to see you right now." So he came to see me while I was on the base, and we met in my office. And then once again, I've always been around winners. And when he shared with me the opportunity, I remember saying to myself, okay, I'll do it with you part-time, because I wanted to make an extra $2,000 to $3,000 a month part-time, because I wanted to take care of my mom, take the financial pressure off of her. Got it. And then so when I met him, I remember it wasn't so much of what he said to me, it's what I felt. I was like, okay, this guy's going somewhere. If I'm just around him, I'll win. So again, a mentor gets sent
into your life,
Yeah.
a key person. And at the time, I mean, you could sense that he was going somewhere because there was something about him.
Yeah.
But in reality, he hadn't really gone that far yet
Right.
at that point, right? And you're mentioning, again, that it wasn't so much the opportunity. In fact, opportunities are given to a lot of people,
Right.
but they're not necessarily connected with the right people.
Right.
Hadn't you seen that opportunity previous to that?
Yeah, it's funny because I think it was 1997. I was at Burger King with my kids,
Okay.
and this lady came up to me, and she said, very rarely do I see a dad in the middle of the day spending time with his kids. And I was reading a book, and she says, my company's growing and expanding. We're looking for some sharp people, and so she gets my name and number. And I remember thinking to myself, finally, I've been discovered, right? Somebody wants to talk to me and give me an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I get a phone call from a guy by the name of Bob Frater from Primerica Financial Services.
Okay.
And it's such a small world because he was a Marine and he did air traffic control.
Okay.
And I was a Marine and I did crash fire rescue. And when we're crossing the runways, we're always talking to ATC.
Right.
So we had like backgrounds, and he was making about $250,000 a year. This was back in 97.
Okay.
And I started working with him part-time, and then I quit. I was like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. And then in 1998, then I meet Malet, which is in the same industry, which is the financial service industry.
Right.
And then I started working with him.
So there was something different about him because you've pretty much already written off that opportunity. You'd already been there, done that.
Mm-hmm.
Something different. I'm thinking, again, because I know part of his story as well. And, he struggled even with confidence and everything, which you'd never know that now.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to think back and go, wow, what gave him the confidence and the boldness to make the type of statement that he made to you?
Mm.
It's like, how can you, something that you know nothing about, and then where are you? I'm coming. I mean, you're a Marine.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in shape. You're a big guy. You're not. I mean, it took a lot of boldness really to have that type of confidence. Is that really what kind of drew you, you think?
Well, the backstory for him is, he was starting out the business and he met with his mentor.
Okay.
And his mentor explained to him the difference between general recruiting and specific recruiting.
Okay.
And his mentor said to him at the time, he says, your business is doing good, but in order for your business to do great, you have to attract someone in your business that loves it just as much as you do and that's just as talented as you. So he went back home and he got real specific on what he was looking for.
Okay.
So when he got my name and number, did my profile, it matched everything that he had put down on a piece of paper.
Good.
So like he knew I was the person that he was looking for. I just didn't know. Right. So years later when we talked about it, that's where his certainty came in.
So the crazy thing about it, if we look back in the divine perspective of things, okay, he's looking for a specific person. God already knows who that is. It's you. Okay. And then he makes the connection. All right. You're actually looking for something even though you don't know it.
Right.
And you needed the right person because you had already been there, done that before, but it wasn't the right circumstance. And it was him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys end up together in a very unlikely scenario. And there was just something about it. You didn't know why. We often don't know the finish line, right? We just know this is the next step. Mm-hmm. So you take that next step. So then what ended up happening from there? It's kind of a crazy ride, right?
Yeah. I mean, I got started part-time with him.
Okay.
I went to my first convention in Las Vegas, which was mind-blowing.
Luxury accommodations, right?
No, I stayed at Motel 6.
Right.
$35 a night.
Exactly.
There was 4 of us in there.
Okay.
And I did the business part-time from March of 1998 to March of 1999. And in March of 1999, I was it was time for me to re-enlist in the Marine Corps because you have to re-enlist every 4 years. And I knew once I re-enlisted, I would get relocated because I haven't been overseas yet. I haven't been to Okinawa.
Okay.
And Malet sat down with me, and he said to me, because we had been talking about it for like 10, 11 months, and he said, Charlie, you got to get out the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I can't get out the Marine Corps. I love being a Marine, all of this stuff.
Right.
And because, once you're in the military, once you go over 10 years, you automatically 20 years because your retirement's 20 years, right?
Right.
And I was like, no, I kept pushing back. No, I don't want to get out the Marine Corps. I love the Marines.
Sure.
It's everything that I knew, right?
Right.
And so we were sitting in his office, and he went on a chalkboard and he did a half a circle. And he says, tell me about your life now. And then, I'm explaining to him why I'm doing the business, all of this stuff. And he writes all of that stuff, all the stuff that I was frustrated about inside the circle. And he says, well, tell me about your God-sized dreams, like the stuff that if money was not an issue. So he writes that outside the circle.
Right.
And then on that line, he writes the word comfort zone. And he says, Charlie, you'll never achieve that as long as you stay in your comfort zone.
Hmm.
And, everything made sense to me. And I got back in my car. I had a little Honda Civic LX. I got back in my car. I'm going back to the base. And, there's three reasons why we doubt, we justify, we blame. And I'm thinking to myself, I said, yeah, sounds good, but no, he doesn't understand, blah, 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 all this stuff. By the time I got back to the base, I talked myself out of not getting out the Marine Corps. So the next day, but I'm licensed, I'm doing the business, all of this stuff. I've even making money. And then the next day, I'm on the base, I'm going for a run with my Marines, and I get this hit, and it's like this thought in my mind that goes, what are you afraid of? This is your shot.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I go, I'm getting out. And I walked back to the administration office, and I said, I want you guys to do my DD 214. I'm getting out the Marine Corps.
So you you didn't wait once you knew.
Yeah, I didn't wait.
And that's another key thing for people, right? Once you actually know, you got to, pardon the pun here, but you got to pull the trigger and just do it.
Yeah. What's funny, years later, reading Think and Grow Rich and Napoleon Hill talks about successful people make decisions quickly.
Yeah.
And they're very slow to change them.
Mm-hmm.
Unsuccessful people take a long time to make a decision, and even after making the decisions, they change it frequently.
Right.
I learned that years ago, but yeah.
So it's really an amazing story when you think about it, because, I mean, a person, I think, can understand why you would say to yourself, no, I can't get out of the Marines. I mean, after all, look at where you had come from. Look at everything you had already put into it, all the work you had already done. You had gotten yourself to a great level. It was respected. It was secure. You were comfortable in that, in the sense that life would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But okay.
Right.
There was something about you that said, I want more than okay. And it was that mentor that got brought along. In this case, you had had many mentors,
Mm-hmm.
but now it was the next one who got you to see what could be beyond just what was in front of you.
Right.
Right. And so then you had to take that step. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, it's a step that a lot of people would not take.
Yeah.
To actually take that step and literally jump and go in and say, I'm out.
Yeah.
So there were other people that you shared this opportunity with, and really none of them would take that same step, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a scary thing because you don't realize it at the time, but I had an employee mindset.
Yeah.
I was in a safe position. I was in a secured position. I got paid the 1st and the 15th. I got medical, dental. I live on base.
Sure.
I don't have rich parents. I don't have anything. So leaving that perceived security and coming out, because this is, the business is entrepreneurial.
Right.
right? It's 1099. You're independent. And so that was a really scary move. And then I've also had mentors in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And my mentors in the Marine Corps were like, Charlier, why would you get out? You're crazy to get out. You
Sure.
got the dream career. I was just about to apply to become a chief warrant officer, which would have took me from enlisted to an officer status. General Monday gave me a recommendation. He basically told the board to promote me to warrant officer.
Right.
So I knew so I had that in there. So I had the dream career here. And my mentors are telling me, why would you even get out? Who are you listening to?
Sure.
And then I have my mentors here in business, which is Ed Milet and, Rich Stolley and all those individuals. And they're like, they said, Dan, look at the people that's been doing what you're doing 20, 25 years, 30 years, and ask yourself, is that where you want to be? Because you're looking into your future.
Yeah.
So I knew if I stayed in the military, which I loved my military career, but I knew if I stayed in the military, so for example, if I would have did 30 years in the Marine Corps, 2017 would have been my 30th year, 8 years ago.
Okay.
And my highest pay as an E9 would have been $7,900 a month, which I would get 40% of that for retirement, which would have given me a check for $2,800 for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Plus medical and dental and being a veteran and all of that stuff.
Right.
So that's what I was walking away from.
Okay.
So which is, doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge.
Sure. It's secure.
Yeah, it's secure.
Right.
And then so I chose to go for my dreams.
Yeah. Now I'm curious.
There's no guarantees.
You're bringing this up, and I know at this point a lot of things have changed. But what did Mom say about this?
My mom was very afraid. My mom was like, you got a good job. It's tough out here. Why would you leave this? But my auntie Nicole, which her and my mom is, they're like sisters. They're not blood sisters, but they're like sisters. Okay. My auntie Nicole told my mom, if that's what Danny wants to do, let him do it because he always knows what he wants.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there was still somebody there to talk some.
Yeah.
So there was just enough. There were these people that were showing you. So to take that huge step, here's a question. Did the fear of not getting to that overtake the fear of losing what you had?
Well, I think if I had to explain it, there's a saying that says, keep your dreams bigger than your fears.
Okay.
If your dreams are bigger than your fears, you'll achieve your dreams. But if your fears are bigger than your dreams, you'll never achieve your dreams.
Okay.
So like for me, I remember the one time that Milet said to me, Charlier, this is your shot at the big time. I didn't even know what that meant.
Right.
Right? But that in reflection, I think that like my gut instinct was like, I've been dreaming my whole life. And then also there was something that was moving me inside because I wanted to take the financial pressure off my mom.
Sure.
So I had a conversation with my mom and I said, Mom, how much money would you need on a monthly basis where you can live because you want to?
Right.
And she told me, I think it was like $1,500 to $2,000 a month. And I was like, oh my God, I've done all of this. But the most I could send my mom at the time was like $150.
Yeah.
So I think that was the thing that was pulling me more than, the cars and homes and the travel and all of this stuff.
Okay.
I was just like, I want to put myself in a position. And I looked at my mentor and I was like, if he's making, at the time, I think he was making like $50,000 a month. I was like, this guy's making $50,000 a month. He probably could show me how to make an extra 2 to 4.
Sure.
So that was the extent of my vision.
So your vision at that point is here Mom, was a hard worker. She did all these things for you, got you over to the United States from Haiti, pushed you into a position where now you've achieved some success. You're in a good spot, but now you want to do something for her.
Right.
Okay. So taking this journey, I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to let you share to others. Were you able to at least send her to $2,000 a month?
Oh, yeah. I did that my first year. I retired my mom. back in 2000. So
Okay.
my mom's been retired since at least the financial pressure has been gone since 2000.
So she's been doing what she wants.
Yeah, she's
Rather
doing what she wants.
since
She's 83
2000.
now. Yeah.
Okay, she's 83. We're filming this in 2025.
Yes.
So for the last 25 years, her
Yeah.
life has been completely different,
Yeah.
mostly because you were willing to take that big step.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So that's got to be extremely gratifying.
For me personally, it's the most gratifying thing for me.
Right.
Knowing that my mom and even everybody at her church, everybody at her church through my entire career has always been praying for me
Uh-huh.
because they see the way that I treat my mom, and my mom tells everybody. She's a Seventh-day Adventist,
Okay.
so she tells everybody at her church and all of this stuff. So during the peaks and valleys, the last 25 years, they've always been praying for me. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So, so here you have a situation where you've been able to do that for her. You touched on something which is key. You said for you, it wasn't even so much, even though you were a dreamer, it wasn't even so much about, oh, let me get the big house, let me get this or whatever. It was your mom.
Right.
Often do we find that it's to do something for someone else that becomes more important than ourselves?
Yeah, that's definitely. I think there's different levels of dreams. I think there's practical dreams, then there's fun dreams, then there's significant dreams, and then there's meaningful dreams.
Okay.
So at different stages in my career, at first it was my mom, then it changed to different things
Right.
as I got older. Now for me now, the dream is having my time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like I love having my time. I love waking up every day and what am I going to do? Whatever I desire to do that day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now you're in a situation, and here's something. I mean, like I mentioned in the beginning, I've known you since 2011. This is what I sense from you, though. This was always the case, even from the beginning. But what I sense is as time goes on, it seems that you're enjoying more and more helping others, seeing others also see their dreams happen, see them be able to do things like helping their family,
Right.
different things. I mean, you've been so instrumental in my family, I know, and for many others. So does it shift as a person gets further along? I mean, the hard work obviously is put in, and you still work hard. But is there a point where the role kind of changes and there's even more of a joy in that?
Yeah, I think there's different stages in business.
Uh-huh.
I think the first stage is what I call the survival phase.
Okay.
Because obviously, when you're on a plane, they tell you, if there's an emergency, put your mask on before you help someone else.
Right.
So I think at the survival phase, you literally learn that, okay, I can pay my bills, fund my investments with my own pen. That's the survival phase. Then from the survival phase, there's the building phase,
Okay.
where now you're going from being self-employed to become a business owner.
Okay.
And now you understand systems, you understand leverage, you understand how to build other people. And then from that stage, then it becomes more the orchestration phase,
Okay.
where now you're doing big events, you're doing leadership retreats and things of that nature. So each of the stages, it's one thing to be a self-made millionaire, but I think for me, it's more gratifying to be a team-made millionaire. So
Sure.
now it's great that you've achieved success, but can you transfer that skill set and teach other people? And then, when you're seeing someone else evolve, because I think as a leader, it's when you start to personally improve, to personally grow,
Yeah.
it's so through my story and through my journey. The other thing that I've done is I've done a lot of personal improvement. So now I can actually teach how I did what I did.
Right.
Or so being able to transfer that skill set and then having someone take some actions and then watching them achieve their dreams and goals is so gratifying. Yeah.
Amazing. So, and that's a lot of why I wanted you to share your story today, because a lot of people think when they see someone successful, they think, oh, it was probably they were in a good position to begin with.
Hmm.
It was probably handed to them, or something like that. And most of the time, that's actually not the case.
Right.
There's a whole type of transition that takes place. So, to the person that's out there that's listening to this, and they're thinking to themselves, well, I'm hearing this story, but that's kind of maybe they're thinking what you once thought. I don't know that that's something I could ever do. I could never really see, that level of success. I'm just going to hopefully pay my bills and get by.
Mhm.
What do you want to say to them based on your experience?
Well, whatever you tell yourself, you're right. If you
Hmm.
think you can, then you can. If you think you can't, then you can.
Yeah.
Right. So I think for me, that person, I would tell them to consider two things. Um, One is that, you know, one of the biggest shifts that happened for me is when I understood the power of who I was associating myself with,
Hmm.
right? So when I was in the military and all my associations were military guys and we were all broke, we were all living payday, we were all struggling, I didn't really think anything was wrong. Right. So when I
Sure.
saw successful people, I thought to myself, oh, those are rich people. Someone like me could never do something like that.
Okay.
That's not for me. Right. And then I think well, I don't think, I know what happened is as when I started spending time with Marlette and I started spending time with successful people, right? They weren't just successful people. They had an opportunity, right?
Right.
Where they can give me an opportunity and they had a vested interest in my success, which means that if I became successful, the more money I made, the more money they made.
Yeah.
So I think the contrast that now I'm spending time with 4 to 5 people, like what I make a year, they're making a month. So what became clear to me at that point is my life sucked.
Okay.
That was very clear. And I remember one time I was talking to Marlette and I said to him, I said, well, my boss said, and he said, Charlier, you're 33 years old. You're still calling another man boss. I said, well, everybody has a boss.
Hmm.
He goes, everybody doesn't have a boss, Dan. You got a boss. And when are you going to fire your boss? So these conversations that I was having with my mentors here in their association, they were challenging, right? It wasn't demeaning. It wasn't mean-spirited,
Sure.
right? But it got me uncomfortable. So I remember the first time he says, Dan, you don't have to believe this. I just want you to allow yourself to dream,
Okay.
right? What if you could turn your annual income into a monthly one? What would your life be like?
Hmm.
I remember going back home. Remember thinking to myself, wow, what would my life be like? And I started to dream.
Okay.
And then I went back to my buddies that were in the Marine Corps and I told them about this conversation. And I never forget it. They said, Dan, remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And I've heard that my whole life. And I was like, yeah, he's right. Right. But then I was associating with Ed and all these leaders. And I went
Right.
back to him. I was like, well, my buddies in the Marine Corps said, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And he says, Dan, but what if it's true? And I never thought about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think for that person that's listening, take inventory, not from a judgment standpoint, because
Sure.
everyone's dealing with what they're doing. Take inventory of the people that you're surrounding yourself with. And if you don't have those people, successful people write books. So you could also associate through books. You could also associate through podcasts like this.
Right.
And where now you're listening to these positive things and you're listening to these stories, and hopefully you have a dream and something that you have a burning desire to go do something great with your life.
Now, along with the theme that we're talking about here, because I know what some people are thinking when they're hearing your story and they're hearing everything we just said. They're like, well, it's not about money. And it's
Hmm.
not about, I don't need those things and all of those. And it's true, we don't necessarily need those things, but that's not really what you're talking about. I mean, you're talking about
I
yourself.
mean,
You're talking about,
I would challenge that thinking because it's not about money, but money's up there with oxygen.
sure,
Everything that people are stressed out about has to do financially. You know what I mean? So there's because I remember saying that to Ed because that was one of the reasons that I didn't want to get out the Marine Corps. I said,
right,
"Well, Ed, it's not about the it's not about the money because I've been conditioned to think
right,
that it's not about the money."
yeah,
Right, you're not in the military because of money, so that's why I got paid 2,800. And I remember my les said, Charlier, you've said that all your life, which is the very reason you don't have any money.
hmm,
But all the things that you're stressed out about, like you wanted to retire your mom,
right,
right? Because I've always had a work ethic.
right,
And he said, it's money is not going to define you, right? It's not your character,
yeah.
but all the things that you want to achieve, why would you not put yourself in a position where you have earning power?
So that's the key there. A lot of the blessings, a lot of things you want to do, a lot of things the person wants to do, they can't do because they're enslaved to the fact that they have to do the other things to
Yeah.
make money. So they don't have the time and the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And so now you have the time, like you mentioned, as a result of these decisions, dreaming big, taking those bold steps of
Mhm.
faith, um, and you're not done.
No.
So here's the question. I'm maybe going to throw this out. Despite everything that's already happened, which is great, okay? I'm assuming you're still dreaming.
Yes.
So what are some things maybe that you don't mind sharing that are still on the horizon in your mindset for you?
You know, I like to do more of the same thing, which means that I want to continue helping people
Yeah,
because I think the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's so many families out there that need help.
sure.
There's so many people like myself that are in their 20s and their 30s that are looking for a real opportunity.
Right.
And I keep that in mind all the time. And through all the experiences that I have, the journeys that I have, part of, for me, giving back is giving back my time, giving back opportunity, leadership, and helping develop the younger generation so they can achieve their dreams and goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So it kind of it comes full circle. We get the opportunity that was given to us,
right.
and now we get the privilege of kind of passing that on and
Exactly.
putting that into others and having the joy of seeing that.
Yeah.
This has been a great time. I hope that as you're watching this is a podcast you're going to want to share with people to get them to believe and to think bigger. Maybe you've heard Dan's story today and you're thinking to yourself, I've always kind of had this inside of me, but there's people that just tell me, hey, don't be crazy. Just those are just crazy dreams. Play it safe. Do what you got to do. Be responsible. But you're glad you didn't do that and follow that advice, right, Dan?
Yeah.
And there's a life on the other side. Do you have the audacity to believe that you're actually on this earth to do more than just exist and get by? And that's been the whole point of our thing today. Dan, for those that have been inspired by you, maybe they want to make contact with you, they appreciate something about your story. What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
I'm also on Facebook, and I also have a website. I'll
Okay.
send you guys all of that so you can post it. And yeah, I would love to hear from anyone that has any questions or anyone that needs help. And then we're still recruiting and building, and we have a wonderful team in all 50 states.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's something that's and God has sparked something in you saying, hey, I need to check this out further. I can guarantee you, if you get in touch with Dan, he will definitely respond to you.
Yes.
And you will not be sorry for getting in touch with him at all. Dan, thank you again. Appreciate it so much, everything you've not only done, but the time that you share with us today. And I'm looking forward to great things that are going to happen in the future.
All right. Thank you.
All right. This has been the Audacious Faith Podcast. Make sure you subscribe and share this episode and others with as many people as you know. God bless each one of you, and we will see you next time.